Have you ever felt like you're drifting through life without direction? Like no matter what you do, you're never quite enough? Maybe you wake up every morning with a vague sense of unease, as if you're running in a race without a finish line. You scroll through social media, watching people who seem to have it all figured out, while you struggle to even define who you are. You chase success, self-improvement, and productivity, but deep down, you can't shake the feeling that something is missing. This isn't just in your head. You're not alone in this existential fog, and most importantly, it's not your fault. We live in a society designed to keep us lost, distracted, and perpetually chasing a sense of fulfillment that always feels just out of reach. But why? Today, we'll explore the modern crisis of identity and meaning through the lens of two of the most influential thinkers of our time, Michel Foucault and Byung-Chul. We'll unravel the hidden forces that shape your confusion, from the illusion of limitless choice to the cult of productivity that keeps you working but never living. By the end of this video, you'll understand why you feel lost, and more importantly, what you can do about it. But first, let's start with a fundamental question. Why do so many of us no longer know who we are? For most of human history, identity was something inherited, not chosen. People were born into communities with defined roles, traditions, and expectations. Your name, profession, and social status were often predetermined, offering a sense of stability. But modernity dismantled these structures. The Industrial Revolution, the decline of religious authority, and the rise of individualism tore down the old frameworks of identity. At first, this seemed like liberation. Suddenly, people could define themselves on their own terms. But freedom without guidance can be disorienting. Without a fixed identity, many people today feel lost, struggling to answer a simple yet terrifying question: who am I? Byung-Chul argues that this crisis is not just personal, it's systemic. The modern world, with its obsession with self-optimization and performance, has turned identity into a never-ending project. We are not just individuals, we are entrepreneurs of the self, constantly marketing, improving, and branding ourselves. The more we try to define who we are, the more fragmented our identity becomes. Instead of finding stability, we experience an ongoing anxiety. What if we are never good enough? The 21st century brought a radical shift in how we see identity. In the past, identity was something given. Now, it is something we must construct. On the surface, this seems like a gift. We have endless options for careers, lifestyles, and personal expression. But instead of feeling free, many people feel paralyzed. When every choice defines who you are, making the wrong choice feels like an existential failure. Michel Foucault's concept of governmentality helps explain this phenomenon. He argued that power has shifted from external control, laws, punishments, to internal control. We now discipline ourselves. Society no longer forces us into roles. Instead, it tells us we are free to become whatever we want. But this so-called freedom hides a cruel paradox. If you fail, it's your fault. Didn't become successful, didn't find happiness, didn't discover yourself, that's on you. This creates an exhausting pressure to constantly reinvent ourselves, as if our identity is a never-ending self-improvement project rather than something we can simply be. Never before in history have we been so visible. Social media turned identity into a performance, a spectacle to be consumed by others. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn push us to not only be someone, but to be someone interesting, successful, and admirable. Your identity is now a product, something to be polished, curated, and displayed. Byung-Chul calls this the society of transparency, where everyone is exposed, but no one is truly seen. In a desperate attempt to define ourselves, we create versions of our identity based on what gets the most approval. We show confidence even when we feel insecure. We display happiness even when we feel lost. Over time, we become detached from who we really are. Instead of identity being something organic, it becomes something performed. This creates a strange paradox. The more we try to prove our identity to the world, the less real it feels to us. All of this leads to a growing sense of existential confusion. The modern individual is not just lost, they are overwhelmed. The collapse of tradition, the burden of self-construction, and the performance-driven culture of social media have made identity feel unstable and exhausting. Instead of having a clear sense of who we are bombarded with conflicting expectations. Be ambitious, but also don't stress too much. Be unique, but also be likable. Be successful, but don't seem desperate. Find yourself, but also keep evolving. This contradiction leaves many people feeling directionless, trapped in an endless loop of self-questioning. Am I making the right choices? Am I becoming the right person? Or am I just another lost soul in a world that no longer offers clear answers? To understand why this anxiety is so intense, we need to explore one of the biggest sources of modern pressure: the expectation that you must always be becoming someone better. Modern society has created an invisible scoreboard where your value is measured by how much you achieve. From childhood, we are taught that life is a competition. Grades, universities, careers, social status, everything is ranked. The idea is simple. If you work hard, you will succeed. But what happens when success feels like a moving target? Byung-Chul describes modern individuals as being trapped in an achievement society, where self-worth is directly linked to productivity. This is different from past societies, where work was seen as a means to survival. Today, work is not just a necessity, it's a way to prove your value. The problem is that there is no finish line. There is always another milestone, another promotion, another way to improve yourself. No matter how much you accomplish, it never feels like enough. This creates a psychological paradox. We feel pressure to always be moving forward, but we never feel like we have arrived. Instead of feeling satisfied with our progress, we feel behind, constantly chasing an illusion of success that keeps slipping further away. The pressure to be someone is magnified by the constant exposure to other people's lives. Social media functions as a highlight reel, showing us curated moments of success, new jobs, luxury vacations, perfect relationships. Even if we know these images are selective, our brains react as if they are real indicators of where we should be in life. Foucault's concept of disciplinary power is useful here. In the past, power operated through direct control, kings, laws, and institutions telling people what to do. But today, control is internalized. We regulate ourselves based on what we think society expects from us. Social media reinforces this by creating invisible rules about what success should look like. If everyone around you seems to be thriving while you struggle, it creates a deep fear of failure. This leads to a dangerous cycle. You feel behind, you push yourself harder, you burn out, you feel like a failure, you feel even more behind. And because the system never allows you to feel done, you are always chasing an identity that feels just out of reach. One of the most destructive aspects of modern life is hustle culture, the glorification of working harder, longer, and faster as a sign of personal worth. The message is clear: your identity is only as valuable as your productivity. Byung-Chul describes this as self-exploitation, unlike past generations, where people were exploited by external forces, bosses, governments. Today, we exploit ourselves. We willingly overwork because we believe it is the only way to matter. This idea is so deeply ingrained that rest feels like guilt. If you're not actively improving, learning, or achieving, it feels like you are wasting time. The result? Chronic stress, anxiety, and a sense that no matter how much you do, you are still not enough. The irony is that the more we push ourselves, the less we actually enjoy life. Instead of living in the present, we are always thinking about the next step, the next goal, the next milestone. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the system is designed to make you feel this way? If everyone is feeling this pressure, who benefits from it? The answer is simple: the system itself. Businesses thrive when people feel like they need to improve. That's why industries like self-help, fitness, and professional coaching make billions every year. Employers benefit when workers push themselves harder, believing that burnout is just part of success. Social media companies profit when people stay addicted to comparing their lives to others, because that keeps them engaged on their platforms. Byung-Chul argues that we are living in a society of exhaustion, where people are constantly self-disciplining in order to meet impossible expectations. The tragedy is that most people don't even realize they are trapped. Instead of questioning the system, they blame themselves. But what if the only way to win is to stop playing the game? What if the pressure to be someone is the very thing keeping us from actually being ourselves? This leads us to our next topic. Social media was supposed to connect us, but instead it has turned into a machine for comparison and self-doubt. Every time you open an app, you are bombarded with images of success: people traveling, working in dream jobs, buying expensive things, looking perfect. Even if you know it's curated, your brain doesn't care. It still feels like proof that you are falling behind. Byung-Chul argues that modern society doesn't force people to obey through direct oppression. Instead, it creates systems that make people willingly discipline themselves. Social media is one of the most powerful examples of this. Unlike traditional media, which presented celebrities as distant figures, social media makes it feel like everyone around you is achieving more than you. This fuels a subtle but constant form of self-surveillance. You are not just living your life. You are constantly judging whether your life is good enough compared to others. The worst part? This system is designed to be endless. Every day there is a new standard, a new trend, a new way to feel like you don't measure up. Michel Foucault's ideas about disciplinary power help explain why social media is so psychologically damaging. In the past, people were controlled through external rules, laws, authorities, religious doctrines. Today, control is much more subtle. Instead of being forced to conform, people willingly shape their lives around what is desirable online. This creates a paradox. You are expected to be authentic, but only if your authenticity is aesthetic and marketable. You should be yourself, but only if that self is optimized for engagement. You should live your life, but also document it in a way that makes others admire you. The result is a digital hall of mirrors, where reality is distorted and identity is performed rather than lived. You are not just experiencing life, you are constantly asking yourself, would this make a good post? Over time, this reshapes your sense of self. Your emotions, your memories, even your desires are influenced by what will generate more likes, more views, more validation. The more you seek approval online, the more you lose touch with what you actually want. Are you living for yourself or for an audience? One of the most dangerous aspects of social media is that it turns life into a competition with no finish line. The goal is not just to be happy, it's to be seen as happier, more successful, more attractive than others. But here's the trick. It's a game you can never win. No matter how good your life is, someone else's will always look better. No matter how much success you achieve, someone will always have more. No matter how hard you try, the algorithm will keep showing you reasons to feel inadequate. Byung-Chul describes this as a form of self-exploitation. People are not just working harder in their jobs, but also competing harder in their personal lives. The pressure is exhausting, but the system keeps you addicted by offering small doses of validation. A like, a comment, a share, it feels like a reward, but it's really just a tool to keep you engaged. And while you are stuck chasing digital approval, companies profit. Your insecurities generate engagement. Engagement generates revenue. The more you compare yourself, the longer you stay on the platform, and the more valuable you become as a product. The first step to breaking free from this trap is realizing that the game is rigged. Social media is not real life. It is a highly curated, strategically manipulated version of reality designed to keep you feeling inadequate. Foucault argued that power is most effective when people internalize the system that controls them. Social media has done exactly that. It has made comparison and self-surveillance feel natural. But just because something feels natural doesn't mean it's true. Ask yourself, if no one could see your life, would you still make the same choices? If there were no likes, no followers, no audience, would you still do what you're doing? If success couldn't be shared online, what would success look like for you? Escaping the illusion of social media success doesn't mean deleting all your accounts. It means reclaiming your mind. It means realizing that your life's worth cannot be measured by digital metrics. It means understanding that true fulfillment is not found in how many people admire your life, but in whether you actually enjoy living it. We live in an era that worships freedom of choice. Every decision, what to study, where to live, what career to pursue, even who to date, is now entirely up to us. On the surface, this seems like a great thing. More freedom should mean more happiness, right? But paradoxically, this endless array of choices often makes people feel paralyzed, overwhelmed, and deeply lost. Instead of feeling liberated, many feel trapped in uncertainty, constantly questioning whether they made the right decision. Psychologist Barry Schwartz calls this the paradox of choice. When we have too many options, decision-making becomes stressful instead of empowering. The more choices we have, the more we fear making the wrong one. Instead of enjoying our experiences, we are constantly wondering, what if I had chosen differently? This is where Byung-Chul and Michel Foucault's ideas become crucial. In modern society, control doesn't come from restrictions. It comes from overwhelming possibilities. Instead of being forced into one life path, people are now burdened with the pressure to choose the right one from an endless sea of options. And when they struggle, it feels like a personal failure rather than a systemic issue. Michel Foucault explored the concept of governmentality, the idea that modern power operates not through force, but through self-regulation. Instead of external rulers telling you what to do, you now act as your own disciplinarian, constantly evaluating whether you are making the best decisions for your life. This explains why modern freedom often feels like a burden rather than a gift. Every choice, career, relationships, lifestyle, is framed as a test of your intelligence, ambition, and discipline. The pressure to make the perfect decisions leads to chronic self-doubt and an endless pursuit of self-optimization. If you're unhappy at work, maybe you chose the wrong career. If your relationship isn't perfect, maybe you picked the wrong partner. If you're struggling in life, maybe you didn't optimize your habits well enough. This creates a silent form of oppression, where people are constantly policing themselves, trying to ensure that every decision maximizes success, happiness, and efficiency. Instead of embracing imperfection and uncertainty, modern society encourages people to see their own lives as a never-ending project of improvement. The result? Exhaustion, paralysis, a deep sense of inadequacy. When everything is a choice, failure is never external. It is always personal. Adding to this pressure is social media's illusion of the best life. The modern world doesn't just give you infinite choices, it also bombards you with images of people who seem to have chosen better than you. Every time you scroll online, you see people who have the perfect career, the perfect relationship, the perfect body, the perfect work-life balance. Even if you know that these portrayals are curated, they still influence your perception of your own life. When you see someone who seems happier or more successful, you start questioning your own choices. Should I be doing something else? Did I take the wrong path? Byung-Chul explains that modern individuals are not just workers, they are entrepreneurs of the self. You are expected to constantly manage, optimize, and perfect your life as if it were a business. This creates a permanent state of dissatisfaction because there is always something you could be doing better. But here's the truth. There is no perfect choice. No matter what path you take, you will always wonder about the alternatives. The key is not to find the perfect life, but to accept that imperfection and uncertainty are part of existence. So, how do you escape this endless cycle of doubt and self-optimization? How do you find clarity in a world that constantly makes you question whether you're doing life right? Embrace the idea that there is no right choice. Every path has pros and cons. Instead of chasing perfection, focus on what feels meaningful to you. Limit unnecessary choices. When possible, create routines and structures that reduce decision fatigue. Not every part of your life needs to be optimized. Stop comparing your timeline to others. Life is not a competition. Just because someone seems ahead doesn't mean they are happier or more fulfilled than you. Redefine success on your own terms. Society tells you that success means achievement, efficiency, and external validation. But real fulfillment comes from alignment with your own values and desires, not from chasing an illusion of the best life. The overwhelming number of choices in modern life is not a sign of freedom. It is a new form of control. In today's world, doing nothing feels like a sin. If you're not actively working, learning, or improving yourself, you might feel a deep sense of guilt. But why? When did rest become something to feel ashamed of? The answer lies in the ideology of productivity, a belief system that equates your worth with your efficiency. The more you produce, the more valuable you are. This mindset didn't arise naturally. It was engineered by capitalist society to ensure people keep working, even when they're exhausted. Historically, work was simply a means of survival. But with the rise of industrial capitalism, it became something more, a measure of character, discipline, and even morality. Those who worked hard were seen as good and virtuous, while those who rested were labeled lazy and unworthy. Byung-Chul argues that we have internalized this ideology so deeply that we now exploit ourselves voluntarily. We don't need external pressure to keep working. We push ourselves out of fear of being left behind. In the past, discipline was imposed by external forces, such as strict bosses or religious institutions. But today, we have become our own taskmasters, constantly monitoring our productivity and punishing ourselves for any moment of idleness. This is why many people feel anxious when they take a break. Instead of enjoying rest, they think, I should be doing something useful. I'm wasting time. Other people are working harder than me. But here's the truth. Rest is not wasted time. It is essential for creativity, well-being, and even long-term success. Hustle culture tells you that if you just work harder, sleep less, and grind 24/7, success is inevitable. But is that really true? Many people work long hours, stay disciplined, and sacrifice their personal lives, yet they never achieve the financial freedom or recognition they were promised. Why? Because hustle culture is built on a lie, that effort alone determines success. In reality, factors like privilege, systemic barriers, and sheer luck play a massive role in who makes it and who doesn't. The idea that anyone can succeed if they just work hard enough is a comforting illusion, one that protects those in power while making individuals blame themselves for their struggles. Michel Foucault would argue that hustle culture is a modern tool of control. Instead of questioning why wealth and opportunities are concentrated in the hands of a few, people are taught to blame themselves for not working hard enough. This keeps society running smoothly, because as long as people believe success is a personal responsibility, they won't challenge the system that makes it so difficult to succeed. The most dangerous aspect of hustle culture is that it doesn't just steal your time, it steals your identity. You begin to define yourself by your work, measuring your self-worth by how much you produce. And when you stop, you feel empty, lost, and directionless. Imagine this. You decide to take a day off, No work, no emails, no obligations, just pure rest. But instead of feeling relaxed, you feel anxious. Why? This feeling comes from a deeply internalized belief that rest is unproductive and therefore wrong. Society has trained you to associate work with virtue and leisure with wastefulness. This is why people often say things like, "I'll rest when I deserve it. I need to earn my free time. I can't relax until I finish my to-do list." But here's the paradox. In a world obsessed with productivity, you will never feel like you've done enough. There will always be more work to do, more goals to achieve, more skills to improve. If you wait until you deserve rest, you will never truly rest at all. Byung-Chul calls this self-exploitation, the idea that people today are not oppressed by external authorities, but by their own internalized work ethic. The modern worker is both the master and the slave, the oppressor and the oppressed. The result? Burnout, exhaustion, and a sense of never being good enough. But what if you could reject this mindset? What if you could redefine rest not as laziness, but as resistance? Breaking free from hustle culture doesn't mean you stop working. It means you stop defining your entire existence by your productivity. Here's how. Redefine rest as productive. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It is what makes deep thinking, creativity, and long-term success possible. Taking breaks enhances your ability to work, rather than reducing it. Set boundaries between work and personal life. Just because technology allows you to work 24/7 doesn't mean you should. Turn off notifications, set work hours, and protect your free time. Reject the guilt. Feeling guilty for resting is a learned behavior, not a natural instinct. Remind yourself that your worth is not tied to your efficiency. Stop glorifying busyness. Many people use busyness as a status symbol, bragging about how much they work as if exhaustion is an achievement. We live in an age where staying connected has never been easier. Social media, instant messaging, and virtual meetings allow us to interact with people anytime, anywhere. Yet, paradoxically, people today report higher levels of loneliness than ever before. How can this be? The problem is that the quality of our connections has been replaced by quantity. The more digital our interactions become, the less meaningful they feel. A like is not a hug. A comment is not a deep conversation. A video call is not the same as real physical presence. Byung-Chul argues that modern society has turned human relationships into transactions. People no longer interact for the sake of genuine connection, but rather to maintain an image, gain social capital, or feel momentarily validated. Instead of deep, lasting relationships, we have shallow, disposable interactions that fail to satisfy our need for true belonging. Michel Foucault would take it even further, arguing that loneliness is not just an accident of modern life, but an intentional consequence of the way power operates. When people are isolated, they become easier to control. A fragmented society, where individuals feel disconnected and alienated, is less likely to organize, resist, or challenge the system. This is why loneliness is not just an emotional state. It is a political and economic issue. But before we explore how power benefits from social isolation, let's first understand how loneliness has become so widespread. In the past, humans thrived in close-knit communities. Whether it was through extended families, religious groups, or local neighborhoods, people had a strong sense of belonging. They knew their role in society, and their identities were deeply tied to the collective. But modern life has systematically dismantled these bonds. Urbanization, globalization, and digitalization have reshaped how we interact. Today, families are more fragmented than ever, with people moving away for jobs and education. Work culture prioritizes individual success over collective well-being. Traditional institutions like churches, clubs, and local communities have weakened or disappeared. Byung-Chul calls this the era of self-centered individualism. Instead of relying on deep, enduring relationships, People are encouraged to focus on personal branding, career achievements, and self-improvement, often at the cost of meaningful human connection. This is why many people today feel like they don't truly belong anywhere. Friendships become transactional, family ties grow weaker, and the workplace is often a source of stress rather than support. We are more independent than ever, but this independence has come at the cost of deep connection. And here's the real tragedy. When people feel lonely, they often blame themselves. They think they're socially awkward, not interesting enough, or just unlucky in relationships. But in reality, loneliness is not just a personal failure. It is a structural issue. Many people turn to social media to fill the void of loneliness. But what if the very thing you use to connect with others is actually making you feel more isolated? At first glance, social media appears to bring people together. You can stay in touch with old friends, follow your favorite creators, and participate in online communities. But in reality, these platforms are designed for engagement, not connection. Here's how they actually fuel loneliness: illusion of socializing. Scrolling through content feels like social interaction, but it lacks emotional depth. A feed full of faces does not replace real human presence. Comparison culture. Social media bombards you with highly curated images of people's happiest moments, making you feel like your life is dull and unworthy. This leads to envy, self-doubt, and social withdrawal. Superficial interactions. A like or a comment can't replace a meaningful conversation. The more people engage in shallow online interactions, the more they forget how to cultivate deep, real-world relationships. Addiction to digital validation. Every notification releases dopamine, making social media addictive. But this temporary high fades quickly, leaving you feeling even emptier than before. Michel Foucault's concept of disciplinary power applies here. People police themselves based on the expectations set by social media. Instead of forming authentic relationships, they mold their behavior to fit into an algorithmic world, constantly curating their own identities to gain approval. The result? A society where people are always connected, but never truly close. We feel lonelier, but instead of reaching out to real people, we return to the very platforms that caused our loneliness in the first place. A perfect cycle of isolation and dependency. If loneliness is built into the structure of modern society, is there any way to escape it? The good news is, yes, but it requires conscious effort. Here's how you can start reclaiming real human connection. Prioritize deep, in-person relationships. Online interactions can be helpful, but they should never replace face-to-face conversations, physical touch, and shared experiences. Limit passive social media use. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, use social media intentionally to coordinate real-life meetups, support meaningful discussions, or stay in touch with long-distance friends. Engage in real-world communities. Whether it's a book club, a volunteer group, or a local event, actively seek out spaces where you can connect with others in meaningful ways. Redefine success. Modern society conditions us to prioritize work and personal achievements over relationships. But in reality, human connection is one of the biggest predictors of long-term happiness and well-being. Recognize that loneliness is not your fault. If you feel disconnected, know that this is not a personal failure. It's a societal condition. Understanding this can help you let go of shame and focus on actively building stronger relationships. Escaping the loneliness epidemic isn't just about fixing your personal life. It's about challenging a system that thrives on keeping people isolated, distracted, and dependent. Once upon a time, thinking deeply was a fundamental part of being human. Philosophers, scientists, and artists thrived in long periods of uninterrupted reflection. But today, that ability seems to be disappearing. Why? The modern world isn't designed for deep thinking. It's built for constant stimulation. Every time you try to concentrate, You're interrupted by notifications, messages, emails, and the endless scroll of digital content. What once required long hours of reflection and focus is now replaced by quick dopamine hits from social media, clickbait, and viral trends. Byung-Chul argues that we are living in a hyperactive and scattered society, where true contemplation has been replaced by reactivity. Instead of thinking critically about complex ideas, we are trained to consume endless streams of fragmented information. We read headlines instead of books, watch short clips instead of documentaries, and skim through arguments instead of engaging with them. Michel Foucault would describe this as a form of control. The less people engage in deep, independent thought, the easier it is for power structures to dictate what they believe, how they behave, and what they consider important. If you're constantly distracted, you have no time to question the system. So, the real question is our inability to focus just an accident of modern life, or is it something more sinister? Think about this. Your inability to focus is not a personal failure. It's an economic success for someone else. In today's world, attention is the most valuable resource. Social media platforms, entertainment industries, and even news outlets all compete for every second of your time. And the best way to keep you engaged? By keeping you constantly distracted. Companies like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok have spent years perfecting psychological tricks to hijack your focus. Infinite scrolling, autoplay videos, and unpredictable notifications are all carefully designed to keep you glued to the screen. Every moment you spend consuming content is a moment you're not thinking critically, questioning the system, or engaging in deep intellectual work. Byung-Chul describes this as the shift from a disciplinary society to an achievement society. Unlike in the past when control was enforced through punishment and restrictions, today's control is much more subtle. People are kept docile not through oppression, but through endless entertainment, self-imposed pressure, and digital addiction. Meanwhile, those who profit from distraction continue to shape reality. If you can't focus long enough to challenge ideas, question authority, or explore alternative perspectives, then who really controls your thoughts? Deep thinking requires patience, discomfort, and effort. But in a world where everything is designed for immediate gratification, we are rapidly losing the ability to engage in slow, difficult thought processes. Why struggle through a complex book when you can watch a 30-second summary on TikTok? Why sit in silence and reflect when you can drown out your thoughts with infinite content? Why engage in difficult philosophical discussions when memes and sound bites are easier to digest? This is not just a small cultural shift, it's a fundamental transformation of the human mind. Studies show that the modern brain is becoming less capable of sustained attention, critical analysis, and abstract reasoning. Our ability to focus is being systematically eroded by endless stimulation and the need for instant rewards. Michel Foucault would argue that this is not an accident. It's a powerful form of social conditioning. When people lose the ability to think deeply, they also lose the ability to resist, question, and redefine their reality. A society filled with distracted, overstimulated individuals is a society that can be easily manipulated. Byung-Chul warns that we are shifting away from a culture of deep thinkers to a culture of hyperactive consumers. Instead of engaging with ideas in meaningful ways, we consume them in rapid, superficial bursts, never stopping long enough to challenge or internalize them. If distraction is the new form of control, then focus is an act of rebellion. But is it still possible to escape the cycle? Here's how you can start reclaiming your mind. Reduce digital consumption. The more you rely on short-form, high-speed content, the harder it will be to focus on real intellectual work. Prioritize books, essays, and long-form discussions over fleeting digital noise. Practice deep work. Cal Newport defines this as the ability to focus deeply on cognitively demanding tasks without distractions. Block out time for uninterrupted thinking and protect it fiercely. Embrace boredom. Instead of reaching for your phone every time you feel restless, sit with the discomfort. Let your mind wander, reflect, and create. Great ideas are born in moments of stillness. Rethink your relationship with technology. Social media and entertainment are not inherently bad, but they should be tools, not addictions. Use them intentionally instead of letting them use you. Question the system. If society benefits from your distraction, then reclaiming your focus is a radical act. Ask yourself, who profits from my inability to think deeply? The fight for your attention is a fight for your mind, your autonomy, and your ability to shape your own reality. The question is, are you willing to take it back? Everywhere you look, there's someone telling you to become your best self. Work harder, wake up earlier, meditate, read more, exercise, learn a new skill. Self-improvement has become a religion, and if you're not constantly working on yourself, society makes you feel like you're failing. But when does it end? When do you finally become good enough? The truth is, you never do. Byung-Chul argues that modern society has weaponized self-improvement as a new form of control. Unlike in the past, when external authorities imposed rules on people, now we impose them on ourselves. We voluntarily push ourselves harder, trying to optimize every aspect of our lives, our bodies, our minds, our productivity. We have become both the master and the slave, trapped in an endless loop of self-discipline. This is why, no matter how much you improve, you never feel satisfied. There's always another level, another book to read, another skill to master, another habit to perfect. The modern self-improvement movement doesn't actually want you to be happy. It wants you to stay addicted to the process. Have you ever noticed that self-improvement never actually fixes anything? That's because it's not designed to. The billion-dollar self-help industry profits from one thing: your dissatisfaction with yourself. If you feel unproductive, there's a book for that. If you feel unhealthy, there's a diet for that. If you feel lost, there's a life coach for that. If you feel unattractive, there's a fitness program for that. And yet, no matter how many books you read, how many courses you take, or how many routines you follow, the feeling of not being enough never disappears. That's because the self-help industry doesn't sell solutions. It sells the illusion of progress. Michel Foucault would describe this as a system of power disguised as liberation. Instead of external forces telling you what to do, you now believe you are choosing it yourself. You willingly sign up for endless improvement programs, believing that one day you will reach a state of perfection. But that day never comes, because if it did, the industry would collapse. This leads to a terrifying realization. Self-improvement is not about making you better. It's about keeping you trapped in the cycle. One of the biggest lies of modern self-improvement is that if you just optimize your life enough, you'll finally feel happy. Wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for 30 minutes, journal, exercise, read, work for 10 hours, learn a new skill, network, repeat. But here's the truth. No amount of productivity will ever fill the void inside you. Byung-Chul describes modern individuals as achievement subjects, people who believe that their value comes only from their ability to produce. We measure our worth by how much we accomplish, how busy we are, how optimized our routines have become. But in the process, we lose our sense of self. Rest becomes guilt. Leisure becomes wasted time. Existing without a goal feels like failure. And yet, people are more anxious, depressed, and exhausted than ever. If self-improvement was really the key to happiness, shouldn't we all be thriving? Instead, we are stuck in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction, always chasing the next milestone, never allowing ourselves to just exist. This isn't progress. It's self-inflicted slavery. So if the pursuit of constant self-improvement is making us miserable, what's the alternative? Reject the productivity cult. You don't need to earn rest. You are not a machine. Life is not a competition, and your value does not come from how much you achieve. Question the self-help industry. Before buying into another book, course, or guru, ask yourself, is this truly helping me, or is it just making me feel like I need to fix myself? Embrace imperfection. You will never be perfect, and that's okay. Instead of trying to become an optimized version of yourself, learn to accept yourself as you are. Redefine what success means to you. Maybe success isn't about working harder, achieving more, or optimizing every aspect of your life. Maybe it's about slowing down, finding joy in simple things, and accepting that you are already enough. The self-improvement industry wants you to believe that happiness is always just one step away. But the truth is, you are not broken. You don't need to be fixed. The only way to win the game is to stop playing it. If you constantly feel lost, overwhelmed, and unsure about your place in life, you are not alone. But what if this feeling isn't just a coincidence? What if your confusion is by design? Byung-Chul argues that modern society is structured in a way that keeps individuals in a state of controlled instability. The more overwhelmed you are, the less power you have to question, resist, or change the system. You are bombarded with contradictory messages about who you should be. Be authentic, but fit in. Be productive, but don't be a workaholic. Take care of yourself, but keep grinding. You are given infinite choices, but no real guidance on how to navigate them. You are told to find your own path, but only within predefined systems that benefit those in power. This isn't freedom. It's a strategy of control. When people are confused and directionless, they don't organize, they don't resist, and they don't demand change. They just keep running in circles, exhausted and compliant. Who benefits from your sense of being lost? Big corporations. The more insecure you feel, the easier it is to sell you solutions. If you feel unattractive, buy this beauty product. If you feel unproductive, buy this planner or productivity app. If you feel lonely, join this dating site or social media platform. If you feel unsuccessful, sign up for this online course. This isn't accidental. The economy thrives on your dissatisfaction. Michel Foucault would call this a disciplinary society, one where power is not enforced through violence, but through subtle mechanisms that shape your desires, behaviors, and self-perception. You are not forced to buy things. You are made to believe you need them. Capitalism doesn't just sell products. It manufactures problems, then sells you the illusion of a solution. Your confusion, self-doubt, and existential crisis? They are not obstacles to the system. They are fuel for it. If corporations benefit from your confusion, social media is their most powerful weapon. Byung-Chul describes today's world as a transparent society, one where we are constantly watching and being watched. And in this cycle of surveillance, we lose ourselves. Algorithms decide what you see, shaping your opinions, desires, and even your sense of reality. Endless scrolling numbs your mind, keeping you distracted and detached from real-world problems. Comparison culture destroys self-worth, making you feel like you are never good enough, smart enough, or successful enough. And the worst part? You willingly participate in it. Social media doesn't force you to feel lost. It invites you to compare yourself endlessly, creating a self-imposed prison of doubt and anxiety. You think you are freely expressing yourself, but in reality, you are being shaped by forces you don't even see. If modern society is designed to keep you confused, how do you break free? Recognize the system. The moment you realize that your confusion benefits others, you start taking back control. Question every solution that's being sold to you. Limit your exposure. Step away from the noise. Social media, advertising, and productivity culture thrive on making you feel inadequate. Disconnect to reclaim your mental space. Redefine success. Instead of chasing what society tells you to want, ask yourself, what actually makes me happy? What do I truly need? Learn to be still. In a world that wants you distracted, clarity is rebellion. Meditate, reflect, slow down. Stop running in the maze they've built for you. The truth is, You were never truly lost. You were just made to feel that way. Most people spend their entire lives feeling lost, confused, and trapped, without ever realizing who built the walls around them. Byung-Chul argues that modern society is no longer controlled by external oppression, but by self-imposed pressure. You are not forced to overwork. You feel obligated to. You are not physically imprisoned. You are mentally conditioned to believe that burnout, anxiety, and exhaustion are just part of life. But what if that's not true? What if the endless pressure to be productive is not a necessity, but a form of control? What if your constant distraction is not accidental, but a deliberate mechanism to keep you from thinking deeply? What if your feelings of inadequacy are not personal failures, but symptoms of a system designed to make you feel that way? Foucault teaches us that freedom begins the moment we recognize the invisible structures that shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. If you want to break free, you must first see the prison you're in. The modern world profits from your compliance. It needs you to stay plugged in, overworked, and endlessly chasing the next goal, the next purchase, the next upgrade. To reclaim your mind, you must learn to say no. No to the idea that your worth is tied to your productivity. No to the pressure to be constantly available, constantly improving, constantly consuming. No to the distractions that drain your energy and leave you feeling empty. Byung-Chul calls this the society of tiredness. We are exhausted not because we are physically forced to work, but because we have internalized the belief that rest is failure. Breaking free means rejecting this mindset and embracing a new definition of success, one that is not dictated by society, but by your own values. In a world of constant noise, clarity is rebellion. Social media, news cycles, and digital distractions are designed to keep you reactive, always scrolling, always consuming, never questioning. But true freedom requires something deeper: stillness, reflection, thought. Foucault believed that knowledge is power, but not just any knowledge, the kind that allows you to see through illusions, to break free from conditioned thinking, to question what others accept without hesitation. To reclaim your mind, you must create space for deep thinking. Step away from distractions. Read philosophy. Engage in meaningful conversations. Develop intellectual independence. Stop relying on the internet, influencers, or corporations to tell you what to think. Embrace silence. Let your mind wander. In the stillness, you will find clarity. The more you train yourself to think deeply, the harder it will be for the system to manipulate you. True freedom is not about escaping reality. It's about learning to exist within it without being controlled. Foucault argued that power is everywhere, but that doesn't mean you have to be its victim. Byung-Chul teaches that modern life exhausts you, but that doesn't mean you have to surrender to burnout. Reclaiming your mind means choosing presence over distraction. Limit your exposure to digital noise. Be intentional with your time and energy. Defining success for yourself. Reject society's standards. Create your own path. Learning to rest without guilt. Rest is not laziness. It is resistance. Embracing discomfort. Growth comes from questioning, reflecting, and challenging what you've been taught. You were never truly lost. You were made to feel that way. The moment you see through the illusion, you begin to take back control, and that is the first step toward real freedom. From the moment we enter the world, we are fed a narrative. Work hard, stay productive, chase success, and eventually, you'll feel fulfilled. But what happens when you follow all the rules and still feel empty? What happens when you check every box, but the sense of meaning never arrives? The truth is, you were never really lost. You were made to feel that way, by a system that profits from your confusion, by a culture that conditions you to chase illusions, and by a society that convinces you that your worth is tied to your productivity. Foucault teaches us that power isn't just something governments or corporations hold. It's something that shapes our very thoughts, behaviors, and self-perception. Byung-Chul Han reveals that modern life exhausts us, not because we are weak, but because we have been programmed to believe that exhaustion is normal. But the moment you start to question these narratives, everything changes. What if success isn't about constant achievement, but about living on your own terms? What if productivity isn't the ultimate goal, but a tool that should serve you, not control you? What if being lost is actually the first step to seeing the world more clearly? The difference between those who remain trapped and those who break free is awareness, the ability to see through the illusion, the courage to redefine what truly matters. Freedom is a choice, but it's not an easy one. Reclaiming your mind means stepping away from the noise. It means choosing presence over distraction. It means allowing yourself to rest, reflect, and exist without the constant pressure to perform. It won't be easy. Society will keep pushing you back into the cycle. You will feel tempted to compare yourself, to chase the next goal, to believe that maybe if you just try harder, you'll finally feel enough. But what if, instead of trying harder, you simply stopped playing their game? Your next step: taking back your life. The system wants you exhausted, distracted, and searching for meaning in all the wrong places. But you don't have to play by its rules. Take control of your attention. Redefine success on your own terms. Question everything you were taught about what it means to live a good life. Because the moment you stop chasing what they told you to want, you might just find what you were truly looking for all along. And that is real freedom.